Call me Dr. Tony. Welcome to my operation table. Today I'm going to be gutting a computer and putting it into another case. Welcome back to Pushing Technology to the Limit. I have a computer back here that has a very expensive power supply and very little room to upgrade. It's one of the computers that I've worked on in the past with called Dell Waste. So we're going to actually try an experiment today to see if we can actually get the motherboard to fit in this older tower. Some things are not going to be as user-friendly as the Dell is because of the wiring in this other tower. But I'm going to get around that. And today is not going to be really something I can just keep shooting you with videos on how my process is going. But I'll try. I've got some sloppy notes on how I dismantled my computer. And then I'm going to put it back together again. And we'll see if it works. So let me get to work on that. And let me show you what I'm working on at first, at least, anyhow. So here's my new box I want to put in. Well, it's not new. It's an older box. I've had it around for a while, but it's still usable. I just had to find the right motherboard to fit in it. Anyhow, it's some kind of a server box. It wasn't really even a server. It was an old Windows XP system. But I'm going to use it for a server because there's actually 7 hard drive bays in this thing. I'm going to load this thing up with hard drives, and that's basically what I had it for, even though that it was a workstation rather than a NAS, network attached storage. So over here behind me is the actual computer I'm going to be taking apart. So let me get to that right now. There's a screw right here in the left hand bottom of the motherboard. Screw right here on the right hand side of the motherboard. And the same way with the top piece here. There's a screw right behind that cable and that power supply, so it's the right hand corner. Over on the left hand corner, there's one right up there, and at the very top, right by that yellow and black wire. It doesn't look like there's any other screw to get this motherboard loose. The wiring as follows: as this wire right here, this plug, this first one at the very bottom, kind of hard to see here, but that first plug is the actual 12 volts for this fan right here. So then there's another cable right here, so that's the top one on the left that goes to a set of lights, which goes into the front of the machine over here. And it's really not necessary to have it, but that's what that one does. And then there's the Ide cables. This one is, so this one that's loose goes to the floppy drive. This one right here. And then this other one right here goes to the CD-ROM drives. So when that's unplugged, now here is the floppy drives. So that removes those cables. And then there's a IDE kind of a chain thing here, which goes up to a circuit board. So it's this IDE right here that goes to the some sort of a circuit board up in front of the machine that connects to power. So we need that board to run the computer, especially the motherboard. There's other cables here that really are not necessary. So this looks like just a little red wire. Oops. So this little red wire right here wasn't attached to anything when I opened up the computer. But if I ever find out what it goes to, I'm just going to leave it there. But there's this black wire right here that was attached to nothing, and that goes to the sound card up in the front. And that needs the a sound blaster card to be able to work. Then in the back here, so in the back here there's a processor, heatsink, this plug right here. It's kind of hard to see it with my finger in the way, but where this cable goes, that little black jack, get out of the way, is the 12 volts for the fan. And then there's one over here on this side that's 12 volts for the other fan. And then this little circuit thing here is the power to the motherboard. This little circuit, it's kind of hard to see, my fingers right here. This is 5 volts, which needs to be plugged in to run the USB. So that's basically all it needs to happen to take the computer apart to make it rework again. I need to get the switch stuff. So there's an actual switch right here. It's kind of hard to see it, but there's a cable and it goes out into the front that attaches to this little circuit board right here. So this whole circuit board needs to come out and plug back into the motherboard. So that's about it for the stuff that needs to come out. Besides the hard drives, power supply is a piece of junk. So it's semi-taken apart because I was documenting my wiring diagram on the motherboard. So it's not a bad computer, but it only allows you to put 3 hard drives in, and now I've got the parts to actually put it in to have more hard drives, and this has SATA and IDE. So I can put the parts here on the expansion slots, and I really only need a SATA board, which is what I've got, to run multiple hard drives. And I can also run some older equipment as well. And you're going to say, well, it's not the latest and the greatest. Well, so what? I mean, this is my project, not yours, and I don't need the fastest machine on market to be able to do what I'm doing. I just need something that's quite accurate. It's has Pentium 4, and it has 2 gigs of RAM in it right now. I can put 4 in it, but we're going to see how well this thing works in another box, and I won't have to spend $300 on a power supply. Well, I'm back, and I have an update for you. So, I didn't really have an awful lot of time to give you all the little gory details of me working on this computer. It was just way too hard to try to do my camera work and get this computer rebuilt. So the question is, did I succeed or did I fail in making this into a whole new computer? Well, I can say today that I got 2 failures, and one failure is looks. It doesn't look very impressive. The other is weight. The other computer was 60 pounds, well, now I'm pretty much back up to that weight as I was before, which, I mean, it's not quite 60 pounds, but let me show you what I got going on in this computer, and I'll tell you what, right now, it's a royal cob job, but it sure does work. And if you don't mind a jet engine sitting in your office, this bad boy will work pretty good for you. Which, you know, I'm not going to use this in my office. I'm going to use this in my control room, so I don't care. It can be loud as all get out. Let me show you the tower right now. So this is the tower with the side panel off, and I'll put the side panel back on, but I just wanted to be able to show you what the entire thing looks like, and it fits. And let's see here. There's the back side. So why do I have the power supply up on top? Now I did, and when I said Cob Job Express, this is really Cob Job. You know, it's glued up here. It's not screwed down or anything like that. I put silicone rubber, and it goes through where the original power supply used to be. And the motherboard pretty much fits perfectly into this old case. And it's screwless because this case would not be able to screw it down to the motherboard, but I did some modifications. So let me get you in a closer view of the internal workings of this system. So here is everything. And I got it tipped up on its side here so that I could get a better shot of the internal guts of the system. Now, one of the first cob jobs that I did is this CPU, this heatsink system right here that takes the heat off the processor. It is actually zip tied to the processor, and it has, I've used the some regular twist ties to keep it so it would blow out the air. So it's mounted solid to the heatsink. Now this fan over here is so this was a two fan processor system in the original one. So I had to have all the fans in there or the motherboard would squawk and say, "Fan failure." Well, it wasn't a fan failure, it was I didn't have it plugged in. So anyways, this fan is not really bolted in very good because it's really too big for this case. But it works just fine. And once you got the case all put together, who's going to be messing with it? Nobody. I mean, maybe the spiders, but that'd be about it. So this is what the, I've got only one screw in there. And the fan is a little bit bigger than what the holes are for. These are the original fans here. It's kind of hard to see because it's right in the hard drive bay here. Now, I'm not using those because those are super loud and they're really old. I mean, they do work, but it's noisier than it needs to be. This whole motherboard, you can see here that the motherboard, let me put my hands in the back here so you can see my fingers, that this is not sitting really totally flush with it. Now, how does this stay in the case without it falling apart and doing all sorts of stuff? Well, it was a tight fit. And this is the original Dell frame, not the case, but there's a metal frame around it here. That's the original Dell framing for the Gen 3 system. So basically how the motherboard is being held in there is by this thing right here and the back over here. But then the other thing that's holding it down are my cards that are in here, like my sound card, my graphics card, my network cards, the whole 9 yards. So it's not gonna move at all. And so what my other problem is what to do with the third fan. I didn't know what to do with it. I wanted to be able to pull the heat out. There is I think about 12 terabytes of hard drive space right there. And that's the heavy part, is these hard drives. So I've got a fan and it's just sitting in there and it's not moving because it's kind of tight, but it's not gonna, I can take it out if I need to move stuff around to get a hard drive out to upgrade it or I need to repair it. But other than that, it is loud, but it works. This thing is a actual electric guzzler. This is a big honking power supply here. It's about 700 watts, and I'm using 500, between 500 on full processing power, which is when the processor is up to 100. When it's on just idle, we're using about 396 watts. Normal use be about 400 to 430, 420, just depends on what it's doing. So basically that's what's inside this computer, and it works great. And I have a SATA board here. Now it's hard to see because all the cables are coming off it, but I added that SATA board to accommodate for more hard drives. Yes, there was 4 on the motherboard, but I wanted to use my own board to actually have more room to put more things in here. And I've actually got things all over connected from here and on the motherboard. So what you don't know is I have been working on this system for 2 weeks. Why? I had so many issues. I mean, not with installing the motherboard, not with putting the parts in, or the power supply, or getting everything to function. I could not install anything. And I don't know why it was. I looked up everything on the internet trying to figure out what the heck is wrong. Why I can't get Windows XP to install. Why I can't get Linux operating systems to install. Nothing would ever install on this thing. And it used to work. I mean, well, and one of the things that I had a problem with earlier was when it was in the old box, I had that problem, but I thought it was just a power supply problem. So now I got a new power supply. I mean, I tried the whole 9 yards. I tried new CD drives, new hard drives, RAM, you name it, and couldn't get it. Come to find out, it was a motherboard went shot ski on me. So here I am fighting with this thing, thinking that I'm doing something wrong. No, the motherboard just pooped out on me. So let me show you the motherboard, and I'll show you what's, I still have the original, and I've got a little bit of a story to tell you about the whole 9 yards with this operation I've got going on here. Let me show you the motherboard and explain to you, well, what's going on here. Now this is the original motherboard that came out of the system. I went and I had to get another one. And I got the same Gen 3 motherboard, and I can't tell you what's going on with this motherboard because I don't know. It's just weird. Dell is just weird in general. And it doesn't matter if it's an old one or a new one. Things are just not... You can't explain it. So for example, now this video is going to be kind of a little more advanced for some users. And if you're just beginning with computing and all that, it's probably not really the video for you to be watching. It's for people that can actually fix computers and rebuild them. So if you're like glazing your eyes over because of my speech, I'm sorry, this video's not for you. But if you just find it interesting, then you can just keep watching. But here are the SATA ports for your hard drives and other peripherals on your computer. Don't know what the deal is, and it's the same way with this one over here, the replacement I've got. Does the same thing as this one over here. That this blue one and this black connector here will not work unless this connector and that connector are both inserted. Now, these two alone will work by themselves, but for some reason 0 and then 5, whatever the numbers are on this thing, will not work unless at least one of these are plugged in. And that is just messed up. And when I had multiple hard drives plugged into this thing, it was a nightmare. And I had stuff, and that was a big mistake on my part, is that I had stuff on those hard drives I didn't want to delete. So I was having a hard time installing an operating system because it kept wanting to put the XP C drive on one of my storage drives. I had stuff I wanted to keep. So I had to rip it all off and start from scratch. One thing I just learned over the 2 weeks that I've been working on this thing, and once I finally got it operational and was able to try things out on the new computer that I put together, you can say new or you can say old. It doesn't matter. It's old parts, but it's renewed for another purpose. Well, one thing that I never ever thought about in all my years of computing, that the way the power supplies are set up is absolutely the wrong design. Now, on every tower that's out there, whether it's Dell, HP, they're all standard. And the mounts are standard. Now, let me show you what I'm talking about on the back of this thing and give you my thoughts on what I like about this setup, even though it's not very eye-appealing and it looks like a wiry cob job, but it's performance, and it will work a heck of a lot better than any computer that's out there because of the way it's set up. Let me show you that now. So right here is the back where the power supply would have been. This is my power supply. Now, this top end here, let me get my camera up there higher so you can see it here. Let me see here. Well, I might have to put it down so you can, well, there it is. Alright, so this piece right here, let me put my hand right here. This whole area here where the fan is, that would be inside your computer. Now, on the other side of my power supply is the exhaust and the power connector. Whether you need the switch to go from 120 volts to 220, that's there. The heat comes out this end here. Well, what happens when your power supply is stuffed into this box? And that fan, this fan right here, is pointed down in here. Now, I'll give you one guess, and you might have it wrong. Some people might have it right, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Every time that your computer is running, this fan is sucking air right from the inside of your computer. Now, that's the reason why that all power supplies run hotter than they should, because there's no cool air that it's bringing into the system. It's all getting its air from the actual what's being exhausted off the motherboard, the hard drives, and all the parts that are making your computer run. Now that is a bad design. Now, to me, if I were to build a tower, if I were to make this box myself from scratch, over here, you can't do anything about it because, like I said, these holes right here are standard. So you can only put the power supply in one direction, which is standard, which is down where the fan is resting pretty much on top of the motherboard. Well, if I were to build a case, I'd have these things upside down so that you could actually have the fan and have a hole big enough in top of this case to suck air in, so it pulls it down into the system and blows it out the back down here. Now that's a better way to have your power supply. This thing is just guzzling heat from your computer. Now that to me is a rotten design and stupid. That's the reason why your power supply fails a lot quicker than it should. I mean, yeah, basically they probably want you to buy another whole computer, but you'd have to go for another power supply if the power supply burned up because it was too hot. Well, now I don't have to worry about it because it's on the top and it's far enough away from the heat. This system down here has holes on the front, so it's going to pull in air from this fan down here, and it's just going to push it all out the back. And especially like this fan here too, it's going to do the same thing. So louder is better because it will keep it cooler, although this thing really cranks heat. I mean, this thing right here gets really hot. I mean, if there was no fan on it like it did before. Now I'm hoping that with this motherboard, it hasn't been used that much like the original one did. It probably just burned up because there was so much heat coming from it, and it was such a rotten design from Dell that they wanted it to burn up, so you have to buy another one. And all Dell cases just stink. Doesn't matter what Dell case you have, it's just rotten. Well, I'm going to start changing power supplies around and making them look like this and have better circulation in my system. Now, the other thing that I'm not really too concerned or wondering about right now is just that, am I going to, how long is this thing going to last? Because it's old. But I'm hoping that the motherboard hasn't been used that much, so I hadn't had time to get overheated. And, actually it was a pretty sweet deal because I bought the motherboard on eBay, and I basically got a whole computer in parts. Didn't need all those parts, but I got a RAM upgrade. I upgraded it to 4 gigabytes of RAM instead of 2. So I had 2 more gig sticks of RAM that I put in, and it runs really nice. Well, if you're just curious about all the stuff that's going on, check out some other videos. The one thing I keep forgetting to tell you about is the wiring. That was a whole thing in itself. I don't know what's going on with this one. Why? It's the same exact Gen 3 motherboard. The power supply, not really the power supply, but the power switch connector was shorter than on the original. So down here on my other motherboard here, I'm going to show you that right now. This is the power supply connector. Well, this was about half. on the new one I've got, I couldn't plug my power switch board in to be able to turn it on and off. So the only way that I'm able to switch this thing on and off is by turning the power button on and off up here, and it just comes on once it's turned on. And don't ask me why it does that, but it just does. So my operation is over with now, and I can go on as business as usual with my computing that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to fill that bad boy right up to the bone to where I had it before, but now it's going to be faster and more reliable compared to the USB hard drives that I used to have. And it was just a wiry up mess. Now I'm going to have a cleaner area and a faster performance of the hard drives. So I'll see you the next time on Pushing Technology to the Limit. Have a great day.